Judy Garland was sitting in her dressing room at MGM when she heard the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. Official. Cold. The kind of knock that never brings good news. She'd been expecting it for weeks, maybe months. But knowing something is coming doesn't make it hurt any less when it finally arrives. It was September 15, 1950. Judy was 28 years old, though she looked older. Much older. The face that had captivated audiences in The Wizard of Oz 11 years earlier was now hollow, gaunt. Her hands trembled constantly, not from nerves but from the pills. The pills MGM had been giving her since she was 13 years old. Pills to wake up. Pills to fall asleep. Pills to lose weight. Pills to have energy. Pills to not feel anything at all. "Come in," Judy said quietly. Her voice was hoarse. She'd been crying earlier, though she couldn't remember why. These days, the tears just came without warning, without reason. The door opened. Standing there was Arthur Freed, the producer who had discovered her, who had put her in The Wizard of Oz, who had made her a star. Behind him was 2 studio executives whose names Judy didn't know and didn't care to know. Men in expensive suits with cold eyes and tight smiles. "Judy," Arthur said. He wouldn't look at her. He was staring at a spot just above her head. Like looking directly at her would turn him to stone. "We need to talk." Judy didn't stand up. She just sat there in her chair, still wearing the costume from the scene she'd been trying to film all morning. Summer Stock. A musical comedy about a farm and a theater troupe. Light, fun, meaningless. She'd been working on it for 6 months, and she still wasn't finished. Not because she couldn't do it, but because her body kept betraying her. The shaking, the exhaustion, the days when she physically couldn't get out of bed because the pills had finally caught up with her. "What is it, Arthur?" Judy asked, though she already knew. She'd known for weeks. She'd seen the way people looked at her on set. The whispers. The way conversations stopped when she walked into a room. Arthur finally met her eyes. "I'm sorry, Judy. The studio, they've decided," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "They've decided to terminate your contract. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Terminate your contract. Such a clinical way to describe the end of a life. Because that's what this was. Judy Garland without MGM wasn't Judy Garland. MGM had owned her since she was 13. They had created her, molded her, used her. And now they were throwing her away. "I see," Judy said. Her voice was flat, empty. She didn't have the energy to fight. She didn't have the energy for anything. One of the executives stepped forward. He was holding a folder. "Miss Garland, we want you to understand that this decision wasn't made lightly. But your recent," he cleared his throat, "behavior has made it impossible for us to continue. You've missed 23 days of shooting in the last 2 months. You've been late to set 47 times. The insurance company won't cover you anymore. We simply can't afford the risk." "Risk?" Judy repeated. She almost laughed. Risk? They were calling her a risk. After everything she'd done for them. After all the money she'd made them. After she'd literally saved the studio from bankruptcy with The Wizard of Oz. After she'd worked herself into the ground for 15 years, doing exactly what they told her to do. Taking exactly the pills they told her to take. Starving herself because they said she was too fat. Performing when she was sick, when she was exhausted, when she wanted to die. And now she was a risk. Arthur spoke again, his voice softer now. "Judy, you need help. Real help. Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe you can finally rest, get yourself together." Judy looked at him. This man who had known her since she was a child. This man who had watched MGM destroy her piece by piece and had said nothing. This man who was now standing in her dressing room, firing her, and pretending it was a kindness. "Get out," Judy said quietly. "Judy," Arthur started. "Get out," she screamed. The sound ripped from her throat, raw and desperate. All 3 men flinched. "Get out of my dressing room. Get out. Get out. Get out." They left. Quickly. Quietly. The door clicked shut behind them, and Judy was alone. Completely, utterly alone. She looked around the dressing room. This room that had been hers for 15 years. The mirror surrounded by lights. The couch where she'd taken so many pills she'd lost count. The photographs on the wall. Judy with Mickey Rooney. Judy with Gene Kelly. Judy accepting an award. Judy smiling. Always smiling. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and stared at herself. The woman looking back was a stranger. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, hair that looked dull and lifeless. This wasn't Judy Garland, star of stage and screen. This was a ghost wearing Judy Garland's face. She picked up a framed photograph from the vanity. It was from The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, smiling, holding Toto. Judy looked at that girl, that 14-year-old girl who had believed that Hollywood was magic, who had believed that if she just worked hard enough, if she was good enough, everything would be okay. That girl was gone. She died somewhere between the pills and the studios and the men in suits who saw her as nothing more than a product to be used and discarded. Judy threw the photograph across the room. It shattered against the wall, glass exploding into 1,000 pieces. Just like her life. The news spread through Hollywood like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew. Judy Garland had been fired from MGM. Judy Garland was finished. Judy Garland was toxic. And in Hollywood, toxic meant invisible. Within days, Judy's phone stopped ringing. Not just work calls. All calls. Friends she'd known for years suddenly couldn't return her messages. Lunch invitations dried up. Parties she would have been invited to last week now proceeded without her. People who had laughed at her jokes and taken her money and called her darling now crossed the street when they saw her coming. Because that's how Hollywood worked. You were only as valuable as your last success. And Judy's last success was yesterday's news. Now she was damaged goods. A liability. Someone to be avoided at all costs. Judy spent the first week in her house in Holmby Hills, waiting for the phone to ring. Surely someone would call. Surely someone would reach out. She had friends, didn't she? Real friends. People who cared about her as a person, not just as a commodity. The phone stayed silent. On the 8th day, Judy got dressed. Really dressed, for the first time since the firing. She put on a nice dress, did her makeup, and drove to the Brown Derby, a restaurant where she'd had lunch 100 times before, where she'd celebrated birthdays and premieres and contracts, where everyone knew her name. She walked in at noon, when the place was packed with the Hollywood crowd. Producers, directors, actors, the people who ran this town, people she'd worked with, people she'd called friends. The maitre d's face went pale when he saw her. "Miss Garland," he said, his voice strained. We don't have your regular table available today." "That's fine," Judy said, forcing a smile. "I'll sit anywhere. The problem is," he lowered his voice, "we're fully booked. Perhaps another time?" Judy looked past him. The restaurant was packed, yes, but she could see empty tables. 3 of them. Right there. "I see empty tables," Judy said. "Those are reserved." "For who?" The maitre d' didn't answer. He just stared at her with a mixture of pity and discomfort. And Judy understood. Those tables weren't reserved for anyone. They were empty because empty was better than having Judy Garland sitting there. Because her presence would make the other customers uncomfortable. Because Hollywood's rejected star was bad for business. Judy turned and walked out. She made it to her car before she started crying. But the real betrayal came 3 days later. Judy had been invited to a party weeks earlier, before the firing. A birthday party for Katharine Hepburn, one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Judy almost didn't go. She knew she wasn't wanted. But part of her, a desperate, hopeful part, thought maybe this would be different. Maybe these people, her friends, would stand by her. She arrived at Katharine's house at 8 o'clock. The party was already in full swing. She could hear music and laughter from inside. She walked up to the door and knocked. A butler opened it. His face registered surprise. "Miss Garland," he said. "One moment, please." He closed the door. Judy stood on the porch, waiting. Through the windows, she could see people inside. People she knew. People she'd worked with. Lauren Bacall, Humphrey Bogart, Spencer Tracy. They were laughing, drinking, having a wonderful time. The door opened again. But it wasn't the butler this time. It was Spencer Tracy. Spencer, who had worked with Judy on 2 films. Spencer, who had told her she was the most talented actress of their generation. "Judy," Spencer said. He looked uncomfortable. Listen, I don't know how to say this, but he paused. Maybe it's better if you don't come in. Judy felt like she'd been slapped. What? It's just, there are a lot of studio people here. Executives. Producers. And with everything that's happened, Spencer trailed off. Judy understood. They didn't want her there. She was the girl with the scarlet letter. The fallen star. The cautionary tale. Her presence would ruin the mood. Would make people uncomfortable. Would remind them that Hollywood was cruel and that any of them could be next. I was invited, Judy said quietly. I know, Spencer said. And I'm sorry. But it's complicated. No, Judy said. It's not complicated at all. You want me to leave because I'm an embarrassment. Because being seen with me might hurt your career. Because I'm not useful anymore. Judy, that's not, Spencer started. Yes, it is, Judy interrupted. And you know what? I get it. I understand how this town works. I've been part of it my whole life. I just never thought, she stopped. Never mind. I'll go. She turned and walked back to her car. Behind her, she heard the door close. The party continued. The laughter resumed. And Judy Garland drove home alone, understanding with crystal clarity that she had no friends in Hollywood. None. She had colleagues. She had people who liked her when she was useful. But friends? Real friends who would stand by her when standing by her cost them something? She had none. Or so she thought. The next morning, Judy woke up to someone pounding on her front door. Loud, insistent banging. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair a mess. She looked through the peephole and saw a woman standing there. Tall, elegant, holding a paper bag. Katharine Hepburn. Judy opened the door slowly. Kate, she said, confused. Katharine pushed past her into the house. Don't just stand there, she said briskly. We have work to do. What are you? Judy started. Katharine held up the paper bag. I brought breakfast. Real food, not whatever garbage you've been living on. And we're gonna sit down and figure out how to fix this mess. Judy just stared at her. Katharine Hepburn, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, standing in her entryway, holding a bag of groceries. The same Katharine whose party Judy had been turned away from just last night. I don't understand, Judy said. Katharine walked into the kitchen and started unpacking the bag. Eggs, bread, orange juice, coffee. I heard about what happened last night, she said without turning around. Spencer told me. He felt terrible about it, by the way. But he's weak. Most people in this town are. They care more about their careers than about doing the right thing. She turned and looked at Judy directly. I'm not most people. Judy felt tears welling up. Kate, you don't have to. I'm not doing this because I have to, Katharine interrupted. I'm doing it because it's right. You're being blacklisted, Judy. Not officially, but it's happening. And if someone doesn't stand up for you, you'll disappear. And I'm not going to let that happen. Why? Judy asked. Why would you risk your career for me? We've never even worked together. Katharine cracked an egg into a pan. Because I've been where you are. Not exactly the same, but close enough. I've been called difficult, unreliable, box office poison. I know what it's like when this town turns on you. And I had people who stood by me. People who helped me when I couldn't help myself. Now it's my turn to do the same for you. Over the next 3 months, Katharine Hepburn became Judy's lifeline. She called every day. She showed up at Judy's house with food, with scripts, with plans. She made phone calls on Judy's behalf, leveraging her own considerable influence to keep Judy's name in circulation. She introduced Judy to her own doctor, someone who actually wanted to help her get better, not just prescribe more pills. But more than that, Katharine gave Judy something she hadn't had in years. Respect. She treated Judy like a person, not a product. She listened when Judy talked. She believed Judy when Judy said she wanted to get better, to work again, to be more than what Hollywood had turned her into. And she never, not once, made Judy feel like a burden. One afternoon, about 2 months into their friendship, Judy and Katharine were sitting in Judy's living room. Judy had been sober for 3 weeks, the longest stretch in years. She looked better. Still fragile, still healing, but better. Kate, Judy said quietly, why are you really doing this? And don't say it's because it's the right thing to do. There has to be more to it than that. Katharine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, when I was younger I had a brother. Tom. He struggled. Not with pills but with life. He was sensitive. Too sensitive for this world. And he needed help. Real help. But people looked at him and saw a problem, not a person. They wanted him to go away. To stop being so difficult. To stop needing so much. She paused. He took his own life when he was 15 years old. Judy's breath caught. Oh, Kate. I'm so sorry. Katharine nodded. I learned something from losing Tom. I learned that the world is full of people who will turn their backs on you the moment you become inconvenient. People who only care about you when you're useful to them. But I also learned that the only thing that stands between a person and complete destruction is one person who refuses to walk away. One person who says, I see you. Care about you. You matter. She looked at Judy. You matter, Judy. Not because you're a star. Not because you can make money for a studio. But because you're a human being who is suffering. And I refuse to let you suffer alone. Judy was crying now. Full, gasping sobs. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. I'll always see you, Katharine said simply. Katharine wasn't the only one who stood by Judy during those dark months. Frank Sinatra called. Not often, but enough. Enough to let Judy know she wasn't completely forgotten. Enough to remind her that there were a very few people in Hollywood who still had souls. But Katharine was different. Katharine was relentless. She refused to let Judy give up. When Judy wanted to stay in bed all day, Katharine dragged her out of the house. When Judy said she'd never work again, Katharine made phone calls until someone agreed to take a meeting. When Judy spiraled into self-hatred, Katharine sat with her until the storm passed. And slowly, painfully, Judy started to come back to life. In February 1951, 5 months after being fired from MGM, Judy performed at the London Palladium. Katharine had helped arrange it, calling in favors, convincing promoters that Judy was ready. It was a risk. If Judy failed, if she couldn't perform, it would cement her reputation as washed up, unreliable, finished. But Judy didn't fail. She walked onto that stage, looked out at the audience and sang. She sang with everything she had left. And the audience, they didn't see a washed-up movie star. They saw Judy Garland. They saw talent. They saw vulnerability. They saw a woman who had been knocked down and was fighting to stand back up. The performance was a triumph. The reviews were ecstatic. And suddenly, Judy wasn't finished anymore. She was a comeback story. Hollywood loves a comeback story. But Judy never forgot. She never forgot who stood by her when standing by her meant something. She never forgot who called when no one else would. She never forgot who showed up at her door with groceries and hope and a stubborn refusal to give up. Years later, in 1961, Judy was asked in an interview about her friendship with Katharine Hepburn. The reporter asked if it was true that Katharine had helped her during her difficult period in the early 1950s. Judy's eyes filled with tears. Kate saved my life, she said simply. When everyone else walked away, when I was invisible and alone and convinced I didn't matter, Kate showed up. Not once. Not twice. Every single day for months. She didn't do it for publicity. She didn't do it because she wanted something from me. She did it because it was right. Because I needed help and she could give it. The reporter pressed. But wasn't she afraid it would hurt her own career? Being associated with you during that time? Judy smiled. That's the thing about Kate. She's never been afraid of doing the right thing, even when it costs her something. That's real courage. And it's the rarest thing in Hollywood. Katharine Hepburn never talked about what she did for Judy. Not in interviews. Not in her autobiography. She considered it private. Personal. Not something to be paraded for applause. But Judy talked about it. For the rest of her life, whenever someone asked about true friendship, about loyalty, about what it means to stand by someone, Judy would tell them about Katharine. About the woman who refused to walk away. In 1969, when Judy died, Katharine Hepburn was devastated. She attended the funeral, but she didn't speak. She just sat in the back, tears streaming down her face, grieving for a woman she had known was special long before Hollywood realized it. After the funeral, a reporter caught up with Katharine. "Miss Hepburn, what will you remember most about Judy Garland?" Katharine looked at the reporter with those fierce, intelligent eyes. "I'll remember that she survived longer than she should have. That she kept fighting when most people would have given up. And I'll remember that I had the privilege of knowing her. Not Judy Garland the star, but Judy, the woman, the fighter, the survivor." She paused. "And I'll remember that I did the right thing. When everyone else turned their backs, I stayed. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times over." The story of Judy Garland and Katharine Hepburn isn't just a story about friendship. It's a story about what it means to be human in an industry that strips away humanity. It's a story about the difference between colleagues and friends. About the difference between people who like you when you're useful and people who love you when you're broken. Hollywood in 1950 saw Judy Garland as a liability, a risk, cautionary tale. They saw someone who had failed to meet their impossible standards, someone who had become inconvenient, and they threw her away without a second thought. But Katharine Hepburn saw something different. She saw a woman who had been used up and discarded by an industry that gave nothing back. She saw someone who needed help, and she gave it, not because it was easy, not because it benefited her, but because it was right. That's the real legacy of the story. Not that Judy Garland came back. Not that she performed at the Palladium or had a second act or proved the doubters wrong. The legacy is that one person refused to walk away. One person said, "I see you. You matter. I'm not leaving." And sometimes that's all it takes. One person. One act of loyalty. One refusal to join the crowd in abandoning someone who can't fight back. Katharine Hepburn gave that to Judy Garland. And in doing so, she gave all of us a blueprint for what true friendship looks like. Not when it's easy. Not when it's convenient. But when it costs you something. When standing by someone means risking your own reputation. When helping someone means showing up day after day, even when they can't give you anything in return. That's love. That's loyalty. That's what it means to refuse to walk away. The next time you hear Judy Garland sing, remember that she almost didn't make it. Remember that there was a time when Hollywood had written her off, when she was alone and broken and ready to give up. And remember that she survived because one person refused to let her disappear. That person was Katharine Hepburn. And her act of courage, her refusal to abandon someone when abandoning them was easier, is the real story behind Judy Garland's comeback. It's not a Hollywood story. It's a human story. And it's one we should never forget.